Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Weekly Dose, Challenge Your Perspective. This is Patrick Dare in Washington, D.C. Recently, I had an opportunity to participate in a discussion about the ever-increasing gap between the rich and the poor and democracy, especially as it pertains to Sub-Saharan countries. Many Sub-Saharan countries are moving into a democratic state. They're still young, but they're becoming democratic. The assumption is that this uplifts the people of those countries socially, politically, and more importantly, economically. But that has not been the case. Now, I must point out here that this increase in the gap between the rich and the poor is not isolated only to Africa or those countries in Africa that are democratic. Right here in the United States, not too long ago, the economy was in the dumps. Coming out of that recession, there's a notion that the rich got richer, the poor got poorer. Those that got jobs that were low paying, so they had to work many more hours in order to take care of the families. Now, democracy is supposed to transfer power to the people. The people elect officials that are supposed to represent their interests, those interests including how the well-being is served, managing resources that go into making the lives of the countrymen and women and children better. Now, in Africa, the democratic states, people hoped that that's part of what democracy would bring. In dictatorial states, everything is in the hands of the dictatorship. They control the economy, they control the politics. You better not speak against them. But in a space that democracy allows, where there's free speech, there's freedom of movement, there's freedom of political opposition, and therefore more accountability, hopefully, to those that are elected. The hope is that everybody, all boats get lifted. But that's not the case. You just have to look at around you. Look at Nigeria, a big oil producer. Most of Nigerians live in poverty. Namibia, an oil-rich country, big resources. The population is largely poor. When you come to Kenya, you just have to walk the streets of Nairobi and see the huge cars that people drive. You go to the upper-tier estates, the huge homes, and yet not too far from there, people that live a squalor life in shanties, barely living on $1 a day. Up country, people are poor. Nothing seems to have changed for so long since independence. Now, every so often, every 5 years, our elected leaders come back and ask for the votes, and they tell you how they're going to do this and do that for you. But the policies that have been there have not encouraged the citizenry to have a vibrant environment that encourages trading, encourages entrepreneurship. When you look at the financial systems, they're not set up in a way that is conducive to those that want to start up businesses through loans, very high interest rates. Now, things that lift people up, education, is becoming very, very expensive, so that those that can afford it will afford to take their kids to school, and those that cannot will not take their kids to school. In the long run, these kids are not competitive in the marketplace. Therefore, the rich that can afford it have their kids and their relatives much more competitive in the future and ready to build the wealth. Now, when you look at appointments in any, whatever government it is, this one, previous ones, appointments seem to be rotating within a certain clique. Who knows who? Who has worked with who before? The appointments to the big jobs, you have to know somebody in the political circle or in the leadership circle in order to be there. And because of this same rotation of availability and access to wealth, few get richer and richer, and yet the poor get poorer. Unless, as a people, we realize that democracy is a transference of the power to the people, and therefore elect leaders and hold them accountable to manage those resources as efficiently as possible, setting up schools, setting up roads, infrastructure that makes it possible for people to access healthcare so that they're healthy and more productive, then we have a long way to go. However much we want to see our country as being democratic and moving on a democratic trajectory, we still have a long way to go. That is my perspective. What's yours?